My forefather is Turkic, I am Kazakh. Saryarka is my home, standing on the hilltops. One of the most outstanding representatives of Alasharda, Zhusupbek Aimautov, played a crucial role in the creation of the Alash autonomy, introduced to people the ideology of democratic thinking, and inspired people with hope for a brighter future. Zhusupbek Aimautov is an outstanding cultural figure of the early 20th century. His every work and all his creative life were interconnected with the spirit of the Alash party, ideas of the independent state, and the call for freedom from oppression. Zhusupbek Aimautov is one of the founders of Kazakh literature. He can be referred to as the forefather of the Kazakh literature of the 1920s. He was the author of prose, drama, translations, as well as social and political journalism. Zhusupbek Aimautov was born in the Bayanaul district of the Pavlodar region. His father Aimaut taught shoemaking to his children and other kinds of crafts. His mother Batima, who was endowed with many talents, was also a poet and improviser, and perhaps this is why Zhusupbek was a jack of all trades. After having learned how to read and write from a local mullah, Zhusupbek Aimautov continued his studies in the Bayanaul and Pavlodar Kazakh-Russian high schools. From 1914 to 1919, he went to study at the Semipalatinsk Teachers' Seminary. At this educational institution, he met with the representatives of Kazakh clerisy and started participating in the community service. Zhusupbek Aimautov had been studying in the teacher's school together with Mukhtar Awezov, and they had started their creative career together. In 1918, they published the Abay magazine, the main idea of which was the development of aspiration to education, friendship, and peace in Kazakh people. Zhusupbek Aimautov was the head and editor of the Abay magazine, Belый Put, and Kazakh language newspapers, the head of the education department, the director of the Semipalatinsk province, and the principal of the Shymkent teacher training college. He was a man who brought forward crucial issues of the day. In his works, he described the situation during the National Liberation Movement in 1916. As well as the February and October revolutions. He made a great contribution to the development of prose, drama, translation, criticism and journalism, and brought Kazakh literature to a new level. He represented a new type of writers in the Kazakh literature. Writers of the new type were professional writers. His works and methods demonstrated traditions of classicists. Kazakh writers never followed the idea of unity of form and content. The innovation of Zhusupbek Aimautov is quite clearly visible in such works as Kart Koja and Akılbek. These two novels perfectly describe the national values, traditions and mentality of the people of that age. He also paid great attention to people's everyday life and living conditions of the poor. These works were one of the first to describe the social situation of the labor society. Novels of this writer describe the situation in the society of that age. His creative life is like a mirror of that era. Such novels by Zhusupbek Aimautov as Kart Koja and Akılbek show the life and Kazakh people of that period. The main character of this novel is a young man named Kart Koja. He was called Kart Koja since childhood, and he was a poor young man. Foreign literature and works by foreign classicists influenced Zhusupbek Aimautov, and his works had been written in the European style. He both enjoyed reading the works by William Shakespeare, Victor Hugo, Guy de Maupassant, Alexander Pushkin, Gogol and Tolstoy, and translated works of these writers into the Kazakh language. Today, reading translations of foreign authors is quite common, but 100 years ago, in the 1920s, it was something outstanding. The fact that Zhusupbek Aimautov gave Kazakh people a possibility to read works by foreign authors was seen as a great achievement. When translation was a poorly developed area in the Kazakh literature, translation of foreign literature at a high professional level was a great achievement. He both translated foreign literature and engaged in the discussion with an author of a particular work. Since Zhusupbek Aimautov was mainly engaged in teaching, he paid great attention to enlightenment and education of the younger generation. He used his valuable experience in the study of psychology in practice and did research in this area. He wrote the guidebook on education training manual for teachers and students and the new AUL illustrated textbook for second-year pupils. We should always remember works by Aimautov, which have become a guide in modern psychology. In addition, we should always remember extensive endeavors of the writer and psychologist, whose research served as a basis of a psychology textbook. If you read a new AUL textbook, you will find a lot of valuable information for children of school age and people of all ages. This book describes a lot of helpful information, such as, for example, the treatment of animals. A new AUL textbook had been reprinted in 2 editions in 1929 and 1930. Staff of the Aimautov Institute of Literature and Art have been carefully collecting the textbook of the Enlightener and involved it in the 6-volume collection of works by Zhusupbek Aimautov. I believe that it was very difficult for them to collect works by Zhusupbek Aimautov, since most of his works have been lost. The majority of his poems have been reprinted from the clippings of old newspapers. The main feature of Zhusupbek Aimautov was the fact that he had meticulously written down everything in his notebooks. In his letters to Smagul Sadwakasov, the Alash Party activist, he wrote a list of his works that had been published. Staff of the institute was able to find all these works and included them in the 5-volume collection of essays published in 1990. At present, the staff of the Aimautov Institute of Literature and Art is engaged in the research of newspaper articles by Zhusupbek Aimautov and the search for as yet unpublished works. The writer, who was second to none in literature, author of a number of novels, stories, plays and profound short stories, had been arrested on charges of having links with the nationalist organization and had become a victim of political repressions. Wider leadership heard about Zhusupbek Aimautov only 60 years ago. Zhusupbek Aimautov preserved many literary works of the early 20th century. For example, Aimautov collected works of a folklore researcher and ethnographer Mashhur Zhusupbek and wonderful poet Sultan Mahmud Toraygurov. A poet is a speaker of the nation, its child, its soul, its love and sorrow. Zhusupbek Aimautov valued both Sultan Mahmud Toraygurov and poetry in general. Zhusupbek Aimautov is an outstanding representative of the Kazakh literature, who had been describing political and social events of the early 20th century, pushing for knowledge, art and culture in his works. In his works, Zhusupbek Aimautov described a lot of issues of public life that are still relevant today. His works are the national wealth. He had been popularizing democratic principles, which won recognition worldwide. There is a saying that great people never die. When their body dies, their hearts continue living in the hearts of the nation. Zhusupbek Aimautov will always stay in the memory of Kazakh people, and his heart will be beating so long as the Kazakh nation exists.